over here. Okay. So dang good.
Have you on.
Oh, you're so sweet. I am so happy to be here, and you're so nice. I mean, oh geez, you're letting in the riffraff if you got me on here. So
you guys, this is Kristin Carver, and I'm a big fan. We have some memories in the bag from years ago, and I've watched her take this journey, and I've been dying to ask her a bunch of questions. So thank you for joining, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
You're so sweet. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I grew up in Ogden. Went to Ogden High, go Tigers. And I took a lot of like anatomy and physiology. And when I went up to Utah State, I was going to study something in the medical field. I mean, kind of because I had this like cultural idea that I was like going to get married and whatever. I was like, oh, I don't want to be a doctor, but I'll do something like, quicker. Right. So I went to Utah State and was taking chemistry and this and that to like get going. And I also took pottery, which I'm also like, I always think, how did I get into that? That's like one of those like God winks, because those classes are hard to get into. And I was like failing my chemistry class because I was living like day and night in the pottery lab, and it was magic, like the program up there is incredible, and they are just doing, they have like a world reputation for what they're doing in their pottery department. And so I was like, I would sleep there. My roommates would come and visit and make me laugh, and I'd be there till 2 and 3 a.m. So I very slowly kind of had to resolve that I was not going to do anything medical. I was going to do something artistic. And the good news is I got my grades back up and got a scholarship in the Nora Eccles Kane scholarship. And I had to take all these classes, and I took painting, and then I was like, oh no, I'm not a ceramics major, I'm a painting major. And then I had to take printmaking, which most people probably listening to your podcast don't know what printmaking is, but it's a very old tradition. I had no idea. I just had to take the class, and I found my home. It was such a combination of painting and sculpture and pottery that it felt so like it had this tactile quality and this painterly quality, and it just marries all of that. And it was just such an expansive art, and it's a tradition that has this huge umbrella for like different types. And one of the things I tell people is that all your pictures and books were prints, and the terminology has been stolen from the gallery community. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people think of a print as just like a photocopy or a giclée, which is a fancy photocopy. Right. But anyways, I got into that field. I lived out the end of my art degree doing printmaking and was just like loving it. And I had this idea that I was going to go on and get my MFA. And this is kind of the embarrassing part of the story for me. I tell people this and they're like, oh gosh, this is embarrassing. But I met my husband, and we were engaged after 2 weeks of knowing each other. We're married 18 years. It might be 19 in December. So I feel like we're a success story. Our families knew each other. Like our families grew up together. So I felt like we had kind of this like already common thing. But I went and I had to put him through school. And so at that point in my life, I had this bachelor's in fine art in printmaking. Like, what am I going to do to make money? Like immediately. And my husband was in his accounting, trying to get through his accounting degree. And I found this opportunity through some really I have like patrons in my life, people that directed me in paths that I just like am eternally grateful for. And my sweet mother-in-law was like, you should try and do the alternative teaching program. And I thought, well, I want to have kids, so I'll just do this for a few years. And I got into a special ed program, and it was brutal. I cried every day. In fact, I had friends that thought that they hated my husband because they thought it was him that I was miserable with. He would pet my back every night as I had panic attacks. But what happened with special ed is and it was mild to moderate. So I had kiddos that had behavioral problems. I worked day and night with kids that wanted to punch me in the face because they came from really hard homes. You know, their basic needs weren't being met. So I'm trying to teach kids about math and science, and they're not being loved, not being fed. And I had to figure out how to love kids that were hard to love and then teach them. And it was such an impactful experience in my entire life. And one of the challenges during that time is I felt I was falling farther and farther away from my art, which was heartbreaking for me. It was really hard. I felt like I had to let go of this thing. And I felt like, and I also at the same time began the struggle to have a family, and it didn't come easily. I had a really hard time getting pregnant, and then I would get pregnant and I would lose my pregnancy, and I'd get pregnant again and I'd lose my baby child, and then I'd have to get a DNC, and it was awful. It was really, really a hard time for me. And on top of that, I'm not making art, and just felt so distraught. Like, it was really a hard time in my life. What's cool about that, and what, you know, happened over time, and you can stop me if I'm rambling, but
you're fine.
There was like a good 10 years of my life that I really didn't make art. I would never tell someone I was an artist. Nobody knew I had a degree in art. Nobody knew that. I buried that really deeply because I was not currently making art. And we do in this society think that if we're not, you know, actively having some outward, you know, thing that
like it's all or nothing.
Yes. And I was so embarrassed about that. Right. I had a lot of shame over that. And so all these friends that I made in my early adult years had no idea that I was an artist. And I didn't believe I was an artist. And then I had these really, again, I call them my patrons, these people that came into my life and offered me opportunities to make art. And I made art. My dear friend Joseph Adams, who we're still very close, he invited me to do a print exchange. And I was so excited. I mean, I had a brand new baby. Fisher he's now, is he 10? He's 10. And no, he's 9. Good grief. He's 9 years old. Brand new baby. And I'm drawing I was drawing while I was pregnant. And then when he was born, I was carving and printing this piece that I was going to put in this print exchange. And it's sweet because I made this print, and then my next door neighbor, she lived across the street, another patron of mine, saw somehow, was like, we were talking, and I had all these prints that I'd made. And she was like, "What are you holding?" And I showed her these prints, and she very sincerely looked at me and was like, "Did you make these?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, you know." And she was like, "I didn't know that you did that." And I was like, "Well, I kind of don't, you know." And she was like, "These are incredible." And it touched me, her sincerity, and also this, like, sometimes I know that we need to have internal, like, we need to believe in ourselves internally, but there is something really beautiful about the people that see in you things that you don't see in yourself. And she is a poet, and she was working really hard. Like, one of her great dreams was to be published. And I have now made 3 of her book covers. And right now she has a book coming out that's like her dream publisher. And I get to make that cover. I've made it. It's going to be out. I don't know how soon, but I'm working with the publisher right now. But so it's really tender how, like, I had to realize that my timeline was not the Lord's timeline. But on top of that, during those years that I was not creating, I was creating material that was going to inform my work. And so this is where it all began. And I feel like my dear friend Sunny Wilkinson, who gave me this opportunity to create her book cover, like, she was going to put, I mean, like, her poetry, if you read it, is so beautiful. And I know how much heart and soul she puts into what she creates. And she was going to allow me to be the person that got people in to read her work. And that was such an honor for me. And so it like helped me believe in myself. And then once I just had that little light of belief, I had to, like, get really uncomfortable and do things that scared me and sign up for things. And then people would let me in the door, and another person would see something in me and let me in another door. And it's that snowball effect that has just been really, really powerful for me. So
That's
sorry, long.
asked for it. And I love it. And it answered a lot of the questions that I had. I love your story. I love how you're articulating it. And it just shows how much growth and passion and up and coming that it had for you in its timeline that took place. And so in your story was the challenge? I mean, where was the pivot? What did you need to kind of let go or come undone to?
Um, I think there's twofold things. I think that I had to realize that I had to get out of my own way, like I think that we have to listen. There's this message that the prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says. He says, hear him. We hear that a lot. And when hear him means hear what the Lord is saying to you. And I began to take that really personally, and I changed it. What is he trying to say to me? Sometimes I have to change the way things are said so that I feel like this message is for me. What is he trying to say to me? Because I definitely never fit a norm. I was always a little goofy, little silly, I would get brought into the office when I was in elementary so they could see what I was wearing on a daily basis because they would laugh and I'd be like, okay. But the pivotal point was, I feel like there was it's hard. It felt more like a process than a pivot. I think it does. I guess what I'm trying to say is it wasn't a hard right.
Okay. So
it really was gradual.
Okay.
And I think that I just think all the time about how I can show up for what it was people seeing me for what I was when I couldn't see myself. And what it was were these seeds of belief that I had to listen to and let myself believe it. And so I think a lot about how I can do that for other people. Mm-hmm. Like, how can I see in other people what maybe they can't see for themselves so that they can live out their full potential?
How does it get your attention?
How does ask me that in another way.
These little changes, these little things that you are letting go or shedding so you can have this turn, not the hard right, not an instant or in a moment, but this gradual coming to. How does that get your attention to keep turning? What is it? A feeling? Is it something a person? It sounds like Heavenly Father's working through others to get to you, and someone believing in you really is how you're spoken to. But what is it that gets your attention?
It had to change from, it was gratitude. I had to be in a place that I was open to feel joy, let myself wholly feel joy, lean into these moments and not let it be about ego. I never in a million years would die if anybody thought I was better than them, because I'm not. I know that. I can't take credit for anything that I am or any gifts that I have. I work hard and I try and listen, but it came down to me being someone that was open to feeling joy, feeling gratitude, and not letting my ego get in the way. It had to stop being about me. It had to stop about being about what people thought of me. And that was hard, because I've had some kickback. I get weird questions all the time, who, I have to go for this last work weekend. It's my work, right? Who's watching your kids? And I'm like, my husband's watching our kids. We do this as a partnership. I mean, I'm getting off track, but I think it comes down to gratitude. And I think it has to come down to realizing that we each have what I love to call endowments. And I have a dear friend who is really successful and was making a donation of money to a university. And it's called an endowment. And all of a sudden it helped me to think about that word really differently. An endowment of money is given to a university to be used in a certain way. And all of a sudden I was not so much thinking about me. I was thinking about me being given something that is to be used in a certain way, right? And if I'm in that space of communication with a higher power, with my heavenly parents, then they're going to feed me what I need, what message I am meant to put out into the world. And as long as I'm in that connection and in that conversation, then I'm going to feel really powerful, and not in a power over way, in a power to way.
Right.
To say, like, this is what the Lord can work through you, and this is what he works through me, and this is my purpose and my message. And it's not my message, it's their message, right?
Yeah.
And I get this really beautiful opportunity to spread this holy message. And to me, I like feel so grateful that that's our job, you know?
Yeah. Endowment. I mean, it shows the gratitude. It speaks to exactly what you're saying with the having been given something, for a purpose, and you growing into shining that, and like pushing through something that's hard for you, that's hard for every human on this earth.
Yeah.
Thought maybe poorly of, or at the least putting yourself out there and being subjected to more eyes and more opinions, and to be seen on a more regular basis. I mean, we all get in our heads about things like that, and I think to set aside and focus on that endowment, and to have these patrons, as you call them, and angels on earth that come to us and help us and move us along, right? And give us their belief when we have none, because that's how he obviously speaks to you. I think, like, how do you get to a new place when you're in other people's heads for a moment? Like, what pulls you out? What works for you to pull you from that space?
It comes down to, and with like having a really short list of people who you really do care about what they think about you. We're never going to please everybody. Not everybody's opinion of you matters, because not everybody knows your whole story. Not everybody knows, like, if they could jump in my body and feel the call, they would understand. Nobody can feel that, right? Sure. And it's not our job to be liked and loved by everybody. It is our job to love and like everybody. It's just, so when people are uncomfortable with us, or if somebody doesn't like what we're doing, if we have a confirmation of call from a higher power, it feeds our spirit to continue on. And then the other thing is that when you are doing something that is when you're being visible, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable because they are having a hard time being visible. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's so hard to be seen. And so a lot of people's reaction is one of sarcasm, or they'll be condescending, and that's okay. You have to hand it back. It's okay.
It's a reflection of inside of them. And me, I gain more compassion in those moments, because I can see it.
And we have to hand it back to them, and we have to say, oh, I hate that. Like, that's a struggle for you, right? Like, I want to be somebody that celebrates, like what other people are doing. Like that is entirely how I want to live my life, is look around and be like, look at this kick-a, podcast that you're putting together, and you are sharing hope and love and tools for people to live into their full potential. Like, that's amazing. And wouldn't that be a great way to live, is if what we're looking for is other people's endowments, right? Like, see it within them, and then perpetuate that kind of a lifestyle. Our whole world would be, that's to me like a Zion community, right? Not where we're all the same, not where we're comparing our endowments, but finding and celebrating other people's endowments. Then wow, like, that's cool. Because I also do feel within like this culture that we're taught to be humble, but we get that conflated with shrinking and hiding, right? Sure. And there's a difference between humility, and this is the gospel according to Kristin, is that humility is recognizing where your endowment comes from. If I lay claim to any gifts and talents that I have, then that's my ego. Right. If I'm being humble and recognizing that this comes from my heavenly parents, and that I have a message, then I'm being humble. But nobody gets to tell me that, but them, right?
Right.
And they can tell me that I'm loud and obnoxious and I, wear too much cheetah print. That's okay.
You get to not
That's okay.
believe them for sure.
I don't.
You have that surety where it comes from. And I love how you're
Yeah.
celebrating divine guidance, because as humans, whether they see it or not, there's divine guidance there. Where you give it credit or not, their divine guidance is there. And so
Absolutely.
to celebrate in ways which we are divinely guided and how Heavenly Father speaks to us is an important thing to do, because it could let someone else aware of how God is speaking to them. In all of this, what does it look like for you to look back on this journey?
It's so like I have to like try not to cry, because I had like a huge moment on Monday. I had like a really successful weekend for me. And I sit there in it, and like my human nature wants to be afraid of like, okay, what bad thing's coming, right? Because that's that foreboding joy, right? We want to squash it because it's scary. It's scary to feel joy.
Yeah.
And instead, like, I just leaned into it. I like cried all day Monday, because I was like, this happened to me, and this happened to me, and this happened to me. And I felt like I was so guided. Oh my gosh, what was the question again? I want to
like, what is it like for you to look back on this journey? I mean, this is a divine journey. Our lives are divinely guided if we give it credit, and for you to look back on.
It's insane to think how many steps ahead the Lord is. He's so many steps ahead. I mean, I think that without all these really difficult experiences, that my art would be flat. It would be unimpactful. I wouldn't have a message, right? Like, without the ugly, without the painful, without the act two.
Yeah.
It's just flat, right? Like, I look at art.
Possibly when it went into hiding, that was the contrast to the beauty of it being seen. And I believe in both contrasts. And I speak a lot about this on my podcast, where the light and the dark are necessary to see the full spectrum of colors that life has to offer. And you don't get the depth and richness without that. The darkness makes the brights even brighter. It needs to coexist, and we need to have that kind of duality mindset where we can say yes and yes. And
I 100% agree.
And bring them both in. And I'm curious now, where do you see yourself going? I mean, in your hopes and dreams.
I'm open to it. I think that the thing that I hope and pray for is that I get to continue to spread love. I get to continue to spread, like, this is some of the pain that I've felt, or these are some of the questions that I've had. And that's through my artwork. I'm showing my struggles, the joy that I'm finding. I love to think about awe and gratitude. I love to show how the Lord's shown up for me. And I love to show these things through my artwork. And so as long as He'll continue, as long as I continue to keep that relationship, I hope that He can use me as a tool. And wherever it takes me, I'm like ready, and I'm ready for it, like, I am not afraid. Dream big, like I've had like some cool things where most of what I do now is religious artwork, because that's where I feel guided to go. I have secular organizations that are like, oh my gosh, I just don't know if your work's going to sell in this environment. And it does, because it's a human message, right? Like, there's hope, and there is a higher being that cares about you and me, and people can feel that, right? They can feel that. So wherever I go, I'm ready for it. I think that there's no, like, one of the things that's great about being in my piece is that during each of these struggles, you don't have enough life experience to know that. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to express is that you have dark things happen, hard things happen, soul crushing things that happen. But the older you get, the more you know that the sun comes up tomorrow, because it does. And then the more you know that those painful experiences enrich your tomorrows, you're able to see, okay, it sucks right now, but tomorrow I'm going to be grateful for this. Right. I am. My miscarriages, like, there's the depth of empathy that those experiences gave me, I would never want to give that up, right? And I can't say that to someone who's having a miscarriage right now, but I can say to them, it sucks right now.
Right. And we
It
want to
sucks right now.
in that pain, that it's important to actually accept and live in that pain. But when you start to gather together all of those things that you're on the other side of, you also know there's another side to what's happening now. And I think it can be so important, and can be the little pivots that we now have in the future coming, that we know we just can keep on going.
Yeah. And if you're not afraid, you're not in the right direction. You know, like I have to do stuff that scares me all the time. I will have images in my head that I'm like, I do not know how I'm going to portray this. Like, this is scary.
Right.
And when I peel up my paper after I've printed every layer and the very last layer is printed, and I peel it up and it comes together, I as overcome as anybody. Like, how did this happen? How did this happen? Like, and I'm so reminded that this is not me. Like, I'm hands, and I'm trying to get over my fear. I'm just trying to do the thing.
You're allowing it to happen.
You gotta allow it. And allow, I feel like, might even be a little too passive. Like, I'm taking one step. Yeah, like I'm gonna start that first card. You know, like I'm looking at the drawing and I'm like,
yeah,
how am I gonna do? We're just gonna dig in. If I can just make a couple carved spots, and then you get in a flow and you start to just trust. It's like, just trust.
For me, that's so exciting. Like what we're talking about right now, I could talk to you all day. I think I picture you doing your work, and I picture all of the little details involved, and I picture some of the verbiage you've used that I've just heard over the last couple few years with I can't imagine, because I know when I do my work, you know, things and lots of metaphors and things. I've heard you say, you know, that's what's left behind, or, you know, I can imagine there's the negative space and the positive space, and then there's you even gave some insight into a couple podcasts ago where I talked about, like, I literally named it, like, you know, the art of nothing, because it was that absent space. And I think it would be so cool if I could ask you, because I have a million questions, because that's how my brain, like, what, you know, and we're not going to go into it out of time, but like what your mind comes up with and what comes to you as you're doing it, because you're in your own head, which I would know when I refinish things and repurpose things, and it teaches you as you go. It builds on you, and you fight through this almost cognitive, like a dissonance between the belief of it happening and then the allowing of it to happen, but accepting that it's through you, and that you just have to push through the work and you have to be the one doing it. And it would just be so cool to dive into all your thoughts in the process, in the hours that you spend each day, and what goes through your head, because I'm a nerd like that, and I love to know all the details of what happens and how we flow in and out of that light and dark as it happens, because that's the process. It's the point. I'd love to undo that. I think that'd be so amazing to see.
Let's do it.
I want to know what you know. I want to hear what's being taught to you as you're doing it. It's just fascinating to me.
Well, I could talk all day too. I mean, I think one of the things, like, quickly, is that as you say that, I think about how in the very beginning I have a picture, right? And once I get it on my plate, which is the substrate that I'm working on, I get my drawing on it. I have to zoom in, right? Like, first I have this big picture, which is like our life. We want to know what the outcome is, or we want happiness, and we want all these things. And then you zoom into one spot and you work in one spot, right? And you have to, like, break it down. Because if we're trying to look at the whole picture and find solutions to the whole picture, we're overwhelmed, we give up, and I throw my tools away and I never make art again, right? But I chip away, like I work, I just have to zoom in, right? And it's this idea of letting our lens, like, okay, this is my ultimate, like, idea, but I got to zoom into a detail, and I've got to work a spot and trust that if I'm working this spot, it's going to grow into a whole picture, and it comes together beautifully, right? Like, if we trust it, we trust it. Yeah.
It's so beautifully put. I'm So
Oh my gosh, you're so nice. I'm just a messy, swearing, crazy, I love Jesus and I love my heavenly parents. And I think it's such a testimony building thing to
yeah,
just try and find your endowment
yeah.
and let fear get out of the way and just put one foot in front of the other. Zoom in to one.
And you were
Yeah.
grateful through all
Yeah.
those 4-letter words.
Yeah. Grateful is huge. Like I always think that we love to say, read your scriptures, say your prayers,
yeah, like
I do feel like gratitude needs its own section. I understand that it's prayer. It is the most holy form of prayer is gratitude. But I think too, when they say carry a prayer in your heart all day, I think that it looks like looking around for things to be grateful for. And to me, that's really been impactful, like to see it less as this very formulaic thing that we do, which is beautiful. And I think that that's necessary. But the prayers that you carry all day for gratitude are going to open you up to just being led, Gratitude is like lets you have a constant connection.
it does, it leads and it opens, it expands. And you're right. Well, I appreciate having you here.
You're so dear. Thanks for letting the riff raff on.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing your journey and for how much fun it's been to observe you and watch you. And thanks for sharing it with us. I really appreciate it.
I'm so honored and I'm grateful for what you do. Like we just need we need tools. We all need tools. And I've been so grateful for people like you that speak up and wanna make life better for everybody, Yeah. I mean, it speaks to like your life, like the things that you've worked through and that you want to share what's helped you, make it through each day. So thank you. You're just awesome. And you are always like one of those sunshine people that every time I see you, I'm like, Alyssa, gosh, dang it.
You can't help but adore people who love you and adore you too.
The way right. We got good friends. We're lucky schmucks.
We do. And, bless your journey. You are doing amazing things.
Well, ditto. Thank you, sister.
Okay.
Much love.
Yeah.
We'll talk to you. See you, sister.
Bye.
Bye.